U.S. Secretary of State is guilty of letting those 200 girls get taken prisoner in Nigeria. That's right. They say the guy who grabbed those girls and took them off into the jungle would not have done so if Hillary Clinton had named him to the foreign terrorist list. Guess what? Hillary Clinton did name that guy, Abu Bakr Sekal, to the terrorist list. Also, two of his top commanders. She did it 2 years ago after their group attacked and killed 23 United Nations workers in Nigeria. The sick fact here is that everything that goes wrong in the world that causes horror is now going to be counted by the Hate Hillary crowd on this country's recent top diplomat. No matter where, no matter if it's in an uncontrolled region of an African country or an ungoverned war-torn Libya, Hillary Rodham Clinton was on watch and should have kept it from happening. Well, this is an absurdly unfair standard. It suggests a world-class dereliction on Clinton's part wherever anything went wrong anywhere. Has any Democrat done this to W or Cheney or any of that bunch? Said every time we faced a hell of an ambush in Afghanistan or Iraq or a roadside attack or a bombing that the blame hung on the shoulders of the country's top officers? I must have missed it. By the lethal standard of the Hate Hillary crowd, the one now being road tested with Nigeria, the attack on New York and Washington in September of 2001, the fact that nobody saw that one coming should have led to the president, the vice president, and the rest of this country's security officialdom to be hung up in chains. With us now is MSNBC political analyst Howard Fineman of the Huffington Post and Michelle Bernard of the Bernard Center for Women. Howard, it seems like every day brings, as it does if you read a quality newspaper, bad news somewhere in the world. Something happens, crap happens, whatever we're going to phrase it. And now the automatic machine says Hillary did it. You know, they should check a couple of facts. The fact is, while the organization wasn't named, the three top leaders were, and that was decided upon after very nuanced decision-making about how to go after this group, and not to make every U.S. facility, every U.S.-owned company in Nigeria an easy, fat target for this group to go after. Your thoughts?
I think this is just the beginning of what the right is going to attempt to do to Hillary. They're going to back time and replay backwards every event in the world today and look for a connection back to the State Department or back to American policy.
Is this six connections with Kevin Bacon?
When she was Secretary of State. Yeah. And when you're Secretary of State, you deal by definition in grays. You deal in nuance. That's why her book is called Hard Choices. But when you're trying to explain the details of a policy, why you were reluctant to ally yourself full on with the Nigerian army and the Nigerian regime, which had committed atrocities. When you try to explain the nuance and the grays of your time as Secretary of State, when you're up against the accusatory culture that she is now in, it's going to be difficult. And the Monica thing is easy compared to explaining or trying to defend everything they're going to throw at her from her time at State over the last years.
You know what I think fuels this? Not so much information. Information is scant. Even the people who say Benghazi all day long don't have a lot of information to give you. It's the fuel is the anger.
Yes.
The free-floating anger at Obama and now being gradually shifted to her. The anger is so ferocious that it will power any attack by itself. In other words, the fire in the eyes of Steve Doocy, of all people, or Rush Limbaugh, or Laura Ingraham, is so ferocious that it seems to have weight. Isn't that funny? That hate now has weight. So if you hate somebody enough, then whatever you say about them seems somehow vaguely material.
Well, we've seen it since Barack Obama became the front runner in 2008. The hatred that has propelled conservatives and Republicans to do everything that they can in their power to go after him. And I agree with you. It's unfortunate they're going to do it against Hillary Clinton simply because right now she is the front runner on the Democratic side in 2016. It's unfortunate, though, because it gives us a chance to really sit down as a nation and really think about what should our foreign policy goals be and how has the U.S. dealt with Africa as a continent.
Well, let's take a look
at the big picture. Yeah.
Well, here's how it started. Citing a Wednesday report in the Daily Beast titled "Hillary's State Department Refused to Brand Boko Haram as terrorists," several conservative media figures were quick to blame former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton for what's happened in Nigeria, even charging her with hypocrisy. Here it is.
Now, word is, because we did not place them on the terror list of officially known terrorist groups, it's going to be harder to go after them. And who exactly made sure that they were not placed on the terror list? Hillary Clinton. For Hillary Clinton now to, over the last couple of days to talk about how bad they are, given the fact that she could have done something a couple of years ago and did not, and the fact that her big initiative last week was to help women and girls, there's a little hypocrisy going on.
Rush Limbaugh went further, also blaming the president for not personally overriding the State Department's decision there on Boko Haram.
My point is, why just blame Hillary? Certainly Obama could have overruled her. I just think this is pathetic. I'm just stunned. We got 300 Nigerian girls kidnapped by an al-Qaeda group. And nobody cared or talked about it for a while. Hillary wouldn't call them a terror group. Now all of a sudden, for some reason, we're on a big push to get them back.
An al-Qaeda group. He snuck that one in. And last night on Fox, Laura Ingraham cited a previous attack on Nigerian children, in this case against young boys, and asked why the administration was so slow off the mark.
This past February, the group burned 59 young boys to death in northeastern Nigeria. No loud calls to intervene then, but now suddenly political elites want U.S. action. Where was that powerful drumbeat for justice against those who slaughtered American citizens in Benghazi?
There's the concept. First of all, he did name all three of the top leaders to the terror list 2 years ago when they're saying, when did he do it? This idea that somehow we are responsible for every acre of property on the planet. And if something goes wrong, we should be there. That's not a conservative argument. That's not what they believe, is it? That we should be involved in the internal politics of a country that's not been ruled rather well, like Nigeria all these years.
Yeah, they once had a president who ran for president and got elected on the idea that we were not into nation building. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was George W. Bush. I just think that it's demonology.
That's right.
Look, there are legitimate questions you can ask about Hillary's tenure as Secretary of State. But as you pointed out, they begin at the end. They begin with the demonization.
Right.
By definition, she has to have done something extremely wrong. The president has to have done something extremely wrong, and they will work their way backwards to that, to whatever facts ultimately they think might prove the case, even then throwing stuff out that turns out to be wrong 24 hours later that they never even apologize for. They're just going to move forward in that fashion. And it's a psychological thing, Chris, that they take comfort in their own fears. It's a form of political cocooning, and it's going to go on with this and any other issue they can come up with as long as Hillary's around.
Are we going to have a select committee on Nigeria now? By the way, when is the Republican Party taking this keen interest in Africa?
I was about to say it was very nice to see all these conservatives, beating the battle drum for justice for people who look like me. Truth is, Bush administration, Obama administration after administration has been ignoring the fact that we have Islamist extremists creeping up all over Africa, and it's time, rather than put the blame on Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama or, quite frankly, George Bush, it's time that we sit down and we think, are we really so tired about talking about America post 9/11? And are we really so war-weary after Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, and all the other conflicts in Libya and elsewhere that we are willing to continue to ignore countries like Africa, continents like Africa? Nigeria is the most populous, important country to the United States.
It's filled with sharp people, too.
Absolutely.
Incredibly sharp people. Anyway, Wednesday night, just to prove this is all about exploitation and opportunism, former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, who never misses a chance to exploit some horror, called for congressional hearings. Here he is tweeting, quote, "Congress should hold hearings on why Clinton's State Department refused to tell truth about radical Islamist Boko Haram in Nigeria." And yesterday, Chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, Peter King of New York, and Congressman Patrick Meehan of Pennsylvania sent a letter to Secretary of State John Kerry asking him to explain the decisions the State Department made regarding Boko Haram back in 2011. Fair enough. I think Pat Meehan's got his head screwed on. This thing about Newt Gingrich here, you got to wonder.
Chris,
this is just a proof of opportunity. No. By the way, the reason Newt's tweeting is because he's not on the air. And he's not using that old Crossfire rerun.
And we're giving him a bully pulpit. I mean,
I hate to mention his name. It's like it's up there with Donald Trump now.
It is shameful politics, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Hillary Clinton, back in Beijing years ago, was one of the first U.S. leaders to come out and say that women's rights are human rights, and people poo-pooed it. They ignored it. We are talking about the abduction and God knows what what else of just slightly under 300 young girls in Nigeria, and we're playing politics with the lives of young women. That's sick on both sides of the aisle.
The women's issue is one very important part of the equation. The other not so subtext here is religion. It's faith. There was an attack in a Catholic church in Nigeria where Boko Haram killed people.
Because they're Catholics.
Because they're Catholics. And what the connective tissue here is for the people attacking Hillary and Barack Obama is that somehow they're soft on Islamists. They don't say it in quite those words, but that's what they're...
Because Obama's a Muslim.
There you go. There you go. That's
just for anyone who doesn't really understand that you're making a joke, we should say that he really is not a Muslim.
Yeah.
He normally watches Fox.
I'm translating for the clowns.
You and I know exactly how they're connecting the dots. That's what this is really about. This is as much about religion as it is about gender, and that's the connection between Hillary and Barack Obama, that they're somehow
on the other side
squishy on this thing.
Yeah, they're on the other side.
Well, right.
Because they're traitors, of course, by their definitions. I mean, these words they throw out, it's all about trying to demonize. I think it's so smart. And I will argue that the fuel, again, as I said a few moments ago, the fuel of every one of their attacks is not information. Because there is no real information about, there's a murkiness about some of these things, like Benghazi. There is murkiness what happened that night. But they use that open vacuum of murkiness, and they fill it with hatred. And hatred says, we hate them so much, they must be guilty. And that's it.
And while they're doing it, we don't know what's happening to these young women in Nigeria or young women all over the world.
I'm hopeful they are. Let me just be positive as we leave this topic. I'm hopeful we got SEALs. We have guys with more guts than we can imagine. We're going to go into that jungle. We're going to find them.
I hope
and we're
so.
the best at that. Anyway, thank you, Howard Fineman. And thank you, Michelle Bernard. Let's be hope the courageous people that fight for this country are going to do the job here.